Hello, I'm Ricky.
And I'm Joe, and this is season 6, episode 3 of the Beer and Broadband podcast. It's slated to come out on April 10th, 2023. And we're just going to get right into it. We're going to talk a little bit about lawsuits. We're going to talk a little bit about tweets. We're going to talk a little bit about home automation. But first, we're going to talk about a kit beer that I made for Christmas presents because that's what we are doing these first couple of episodes. This is a new one that I haven't made before. It's a Winter Warmer Ale from Boom Chug a Lug. And it is called Shiver Me Timbers Santa, 6.5% ABV, and it's a nice dark ale that's got like an amber color to it. Unfortunately, the head doesn't stay forever, but did carbonate pretty nice. So yeah, have you had a sip of it yet, Ricky? Can you tell me what you think?
I have, and I'll tell you, it carbonated very strongly.
Yes, it
I mean,
did.
like it almost burns on the tongue, and it's not from the alcohol; it's only 6.5%.
Yeah,
Yeah, this
yeah,
one's not too bad. I don't think it's my favorite of the Christmas lots, but it's crafted pretty well. I don't want to say it's generic, but it doesn't have like a flavor that really sticks out. It's just like a good dark beer, if
it
that makes sense.
is. Yeah, it's kind of like, well, it's not it's a dark ale, right? So it's not
Hmm.
quite as sweet as like a porter. It's not quite as bitter as a stout would have, but it's got like an in between kind of semi sweet, flavoring to it, and it's got some nice spices, but it's not quite as heavily spiced as like something like the old Fezziwig. Not old Fezziwig, the old Nibbercracker beer. So it's kind of like just a nice sipping ale, right? Nothing too terrible out of it. I think I also this one came with um, I, I can't remember if it was caramel um, or what, but it came with a flavorant that you add to it, and it gives it kind of like an extra bit of like perceived sweetness because it's not
Hmm.
actually very sweet. It's fairly dry. I think it finished at like 1.01 or something like that. So
Okay.
yeah, it definitely isn't my favorite either of them, but it was a good one to brew because like I've gotten to contemplate all the ones that we made. I think still my favorite is the Thunder Cookie Gingerbread Stout. Um, that one's stouts, and I love those things.
Hmm.
Um, and my second favorite out of the batch is um, the Mile Kentucky Home. But I think the better beer out of everything, because I'm just crazy about bourbon stuff. But the better beer out of everything is the one that we did on the first episode of this season, Santa's Little Helper. So yeah, basically, it's been a pretty good run. Sooner than 6 months because I still had some left over when we went to Self last year. But we'll see how it turns out. Um, anyways, so do you have any other comments or thoughts on the
Yeah, I'll
beer?
just say overall, I think the beer kits have been very successful. While this isn't either one of our favorites, I'll say it is probably the most like preference neutral. So like where the other ones had some kind of strong flavors that maybe you do or don't like, you know, this is like if I ordered this at a restaurant, I was just like, okay, there is a some dark beer here, I'm gonna grab it. I would be happy with that. It's not offensive.
Yep.
And I don't want to say like beer making is necessarily hard. It's more complicated, is maybe the better way. So to get just good result after good result after good result, 'cause I think you got all these kits from the same company, right?
Yeah, I did. I got
Yeah.
them
So I
all
think that
from
they're doing a
Boom
really good
Chug.
job.
Yeah, they absolutely are. It's a great company to get stuff from. I generally get from Brewer's Best, and there's another one that I've gotten a couple of beer kits from, and then Boom Chug Lug. But Boom Chug Lug is my like kind of go to for these more advanced beer kits for sure. Um, Yeah. So let's just move right on into talking about this energy drink company that's just suing the pants out of anybody that uses certain words. Um, so there's a game called Monsters and Mortals. Their developer um, is a company called Dark Deception is the beginning of it. Um, I was trying to remember the name of the developer, and I have lost my mind here for a second. Um, but the developer of this game, Dark Deception, Monsters and Mortals, which is like an indie developer, is being sued. Um, and this isn't the first time this company sued people. I'm avoiding saying their name because I kind of don't want to give them press. I feel like if they're
Mhm.
doing this just to get press, they shouldn't get any. And if they're not, then they shouldn't be rewarded for this in any way, shape, form, or fashion. But they've sued several other gaming companies, but they're suing this one also because they use green and yellow in their logo, and the company also uses not the same shade of green, not the same shade of yellow, but a green and a yellow in their company logo. It's kind of ridiculous. But I didn't know, like maybe you had some like extra thoughts on it before I start like giving a rundown of why I think this is not a good thing. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could say that, oh, this company's crazy. Oh, this never happens. They're just weird. But like this keeps happening over and over and over again with different companies. And it's part, I think, the problem of having like copyright enforcement, which, there's nothing wrong with having a copyright, but a lot of companies, get these legal teams or hire these services to like defend their copyright. And they're so overzealous that you see this over and over and over again. I mean, some companies are famous for it. Everyone knows Disney does this stuff all the
yeah,
time. But I mean, I remember like last year sometime, some YouTuber ran into issues with something like this, where they had like joined a collaboration team, and that team had hired a company to essentially defend their platform. So if someone was like ripping their videos and posting them, they would like automatically do the takedown strikes and stuff like that. But they were like so aggressive. They were going after people for like reaction channels that are protected by copyright and like everything. And they had to like pull back and tell them, no, 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 don't do this. That's not what you're supposed to do. But those companies are there. I mean,
yeah,
they'll, especially when you've got the legal component, because you're paying those lawyers by the hour. They're just looking for a chance to litigate something, which I think is what we found here. And they've got a history of doing it, of like sometimes bankrupting the studios they're going after. And
well,
I know we're trying not to say too many details, but the word in question that started this whole thing is such a generic word
right.
that like I'd almost claim you can't copyright that word because it is so it's so open, you know?
Well, you can't copyright or trademark just generally generic things. So, like, if I was I couldn't go out and be like, "Well, I'm gonna copyright or trademark Joe." You know, like
Mhm.
I couldn't do that because that's a common name, things like that. So, yeah, I mean, you're right. You couldn't copyright that word.
Yeah, which I mean they can. I mean their copyright has to be for the entire name of their product or the entire name of their company. And
Right.
now they're just trying to enforce every word in that name individually, which it doesn't really work that way. So I'm
No.
glad that the developers are sticking up for themselves because I think they do have a case. I mean, if they can afford the legal fees, I think they'll win. But I think that's what gets all these small companies that get hit is like you're gonna go sue a multi-million-dollar company. Have fun. You probably will win if you can make it to the end of it, but it's making it to
Yeah.
the end and staying solvent that's so difficult.
Well, and so I don't think that they're suing them for copyright infringement. If I understand correctly, they're suing them over trademark infringement, which is But you do have to defend your trademark in order to be able to keep it. Like if someone uses your exact trademark or something that's derivative of it, you have to defend it or the trademark will be taken away, because basically what you're saying by not defending it is you're allowing people to use it. Um, all
Yeah, but I think
trademarks
even
are
to
kind of
that
controlled.
I think even to that extent, though, it's like you've trademarked your product name. You have not trademarked every individual word in your product name.
That is correct.
So
And I'm not
yeah, I mean,
defending the company that's doing this. I'm just saying that is like we were talking about copyright. To be completely transparent with our audience, they're not doing a copyright lawsuit, I don't believe. They're doing a trademark lawsuit. But in order to get the settlement, they would make it so that the developer couldn't use anything that is derivative of that name or anything like that name ever again. And they've been doing this for years and years and years. Like they lost to a developer in 2016. They got EA, or was it Ubisoft? I can't remember. No, I think it was EA. EA had a game called Gods and Monsters or something like that.
or
And
we're going to be called Gods and Monsters.
yeah, it
Yeah.
was going to be called Gods and Monsters, and they changed it to Immortals Phoenix Rising. So yeah, so they not to interrupt you, but this isn't a copyright thing. This is a trademark dispute.
Yeah, yeah. Which that's 100% true.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's so weird to see it because this legal team or some service they've paid out and it's like hunting down everything they can find. But you don't hear about this for big companies using this most common word. Like Wizard of the
yep.
Coast uses this word in so many different publications. And
Yes,
they're not going after them.
absolutely, that is correct. They're not going after them. It's probably too big of a target, but I mean
Yeah.
they've gone after some other big players, so that may just be time. They haven't gotten to them on their list yet, possibly,
Yeah,
which
I
is
would
kind of
I would
crazy.
imagine after losing in 2016, they backed off from the big boys a bit more. I'd almost see this is like the inquisitive in me. I really wonder how much of this does like real leadership in the company see versus they've outsourced it or they've got some department that does it and just is filing these things left and right
So
because
my
it's
under
not a good look.
my understanding is that this is like a leadership directive. This is the way the
Mm,
company is going. I don't know if that's 100% true, but that is a thing that I understand from my limited research into this when I started researching the topic.
yeah, I'll say if it is, they're gonna they're gonna run into some issues. I mean, one, they'll eventually just start taking more legal battles they can, because they're like there's like a precedent set.
Yep.
You lose your trademark enforcement enough times, like, you'll streamline this process. Everybody you reach out to will be like, hey, look, judge, here's 5 other cases, all for the exact same thing, all of which were found not to be enforceable. So come on, like that's the hit they're going to have to worry about, apart from potentially upsetting your customer base, because there's, I would say, a decent amount of overlap between people who play video games and people who consume this product.
Yep.
At some point, like, this is going to become an email to a judge. you
Yeah.
know
Or you're going to end up bankrupting your company just because so many people are just like, you know what, I don't want to deal with that. But a lot of people don't vote with their wallets. They'll get outraged. They'll say stuff. They'll go on a walkout or something like that. They'll have camaraderie, and then they turn around and they're doing the exact thing that they're protesting against, previously. So it's
yeah,
highly
maybe.
likely that won't hurt their bottom line.
Yeah, I don't know about this one as much because it is such a competitive space. Like, they have so many competitors, and I would not consider them I mean, they're certainly one of the bigger names in their industry, but I bet money they're not in the top three,
Oh yeah, they're not. They're
you
definitely
know?
not in the top three.
So, like, what's the best way to say it? Here, I'll say it like this. again, try not to name the product. I have used this product. I have consumed this product. It is actually one of my preferred products of that type in its genre of product.
Yeah.
And frankly, I've got no problem just switching to a competitor. You know, like it's not it the reason you use this product is not really anything unique. Its competitors are equally as good. It's the reason I picked it was because it's easily available. But the other ones are pretty available too, you know?
Yeah, I mean that's very true, and there, I mean, it has a flavor, and it does a certain thing a certain way, right? Um, but it's not wholly unique, and I would even be you know I would say it's expensive for what it is and what it does when you can get cheaper alternatives that taste better and are generally better
Yeah.
overall. So,
You know what?
uh,
Yeah, let me plug that. We don't want to say the company name. Can we talk about what the product actually is?
well, it's an energy
Okay.
drink. I
There
say
you
it in
go.
the
Oh, okay, I
thing.
missed that
Yeah,
in the beginning.
yeah,
So yeah, look,
yeah.
I'm just going to throw this out to everybody listening. If you don't want to drink energy drinks anymore, but you still want a lot of caffeine and maybe you don't like coffee or coffee's not enough, I ran across this thing not too long ago called Yerba Mate.
Yep.
So good. It has more caffeine than coffee, but it has more like vitamins in it than tea does. And it is essentially just like a little bit more bitter green tea. That's it. So if you
Nice.
can drink green tea, you can drink this stuff, and you sweeten it just like you do green tea if you want it sweet. It's good stuff. I've been keeping like a gallon in my fridge and drinking that like every morning for my caffeine, and it's good stuff.
I'll have to check that out. I mean, we are going to do a tea episode
Yeah,
this
I'll
year.
bring it
So.
over. It is I bought such a massive amount. I really, maybe a funny story. I bought it not knowing like what form factor it comes in. I just bought like a 1 pound bag, which is a lot.
Yep.
And because it's technically not a tea, because that comes from a very particular type of plant. It's just the leaf of like another bush.
Right.
Um, they grind it up kind of fine. And so I have one of those like metal steepers that is not like the micro one. It just has like normal small holes, kind of like what you would use to put other spices in, not just
Hmm.
teas. And like half of it seeps through.
Oh wow.
So if you've got like smaller tea bags or something like that, we can definitely use those. Otherwise, I might bring a little cheesecloth or something to put it in
No, dude,
instead.
I've got little like tea
Little
bag
microfilament
things.
ones. There you
No,
go.
I've got like actual tea bags that you can just fill up.
Oh, there you go. See,
Yeah,
that'll be perfect.
yeah. So we'll be able to make some stuff with this. It'll be good. Um, yeah. So, well, do we want to talk about the case of the litigious energy drink company, or do we want to say anything else
I
about that?
I think we've covered it as well as we
Okay.
can. It's sad it's happening. It's not new, and it's just funny sometimes to go in and see the extent to which someone will try and claim, you know, trademark and all that.
Yeah, it's a bit ridiculous. I must say. Um, so let's talk about tweets that contain. Well, so do you know what Substack is?
I
Substack.com.
didn't actually until you put this in as a topic, and I did some research on it.
Okay. So Substack.com is like a podcast news platform. It's generally seen as like kind of open place for people to be able to go and like put out information and stuff like that. So Twitter sometime this week started um, making it so that any link that was linked back to Substack was flagged as being possibly malicious. And now they're kind of like going further and making it so that you can't repost or reshare them or do anything that is like upvoting them, or not upvoting, but a thumbs up or anything like that. And so, so essentially, Elon Musk's free speech platform is censoring a whole segment of people that mostly use this, like journalists and stuff, who use this to be able to like share content and information around the world, especially when they're like journalists who are like in countries that don't like for them to share information. So it's so free speech, it's eliminating the freedom of speech from other people that are trying to have free speech. I think that is hilariously sad. Terrible, even. So basically, Substack's been banned from Twitter. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I wouldn't quite go that far. But I think it runs into the same problem that Twitter had when it did this exact same thing to a bunch of other like social media platforms. They eventually rolled that back. But you can post everything with the link. You just can't then like interact with it, which is what Elon, when he took over, said they were going to do to a lot of things. Now, one of the things though that really surprised me when I started like researching into the Substack thing is that is like a heavily monetized platform.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the real issue here is that Twitter needs to figure out what its stance is. Like, because Twitter really can be one of two things. It can either be an augmentation of someone's social media presence, or it can try to be a sole provider of a social media presence. So are you trying to replace things like Facebook and Substack? Or are you trying to be like just one of the cogs in the machine of someone's like social media presence? And you can't really have it both ways. Because as we're seeing with this kind of Substack ban, is people that were driving people to Substack to monetize their content, are having a much harder time doing that because they can't engage with those audiences, right? So they can still like post it and show it, but then they can't have comments. People who like their stuff can't retweet it to their friends. So like it's not really performing that augmentation, right? It's shutting that down. But at the same time, I mean, I don't know anybody who's like on social media who's like my only social media is Twitter. Like they've all
Very
got a
true.
Facebook or like an Instagram or something else. So like pick your fight, Elon. Like I think that's the thing that concerns me the most about it is less the free speech thing, because you're still allowed to post it, you're still allowed to like screen cap it in an image and then go talk about it with your friends. Like it's not straight up like no one's going out and deleting those tweets like we used to see some stuff that happened on Twitter before he took over. It's more just like you tried to do this to Facebook, then you stopped doing it to Facebook. But now, just like as we were talking with the trademark thing, now that you found a smaller company to do it to, you're doing it to that smaller company. So, like, why? That seems to be the big conflict to me. Either you're saying you can post about other social media platforms, you can post about other monetization platforms, but you don't get these like features of if it was all within our platform, or you just let all of it get posted. Like, pick a lane.
don't don't drive on both sides of the road. Only drive on one. Um,
Well,
yeah.
more like, are you going forwards or backwards? Like, what's your destination?
Well,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
where are you trying to go with your company? And figure that out before you start actually implementing things. I don't think this is the death of Twitter as I saw like people going on about, because I'll be honest with you, I had never even heard of this platform before. And looking at some of their featured content, I mean, I'm not going to say, like, I'm not going to say this platform doesn't deserve to exist. It does. And it is, people deserve to monetize their stuff. But this is not a platform that now I've learned what's on it and looked through like their featured pages and stuff like that I'm ever going to return to it to.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, there was a nice little poem blog. That's cool, but that's not something I'm going to pay money for. There's one that's like a mystery cult to witchcraft. That's cool, I guess. I'd be a little concerned to say I don't think I want to pay $30 a month for someone to teach me what they say is real practical witchcraft. But to each their own. So yeah, I guess my stance is just figure out what you're doing. Make
I,
a
I
plan,
think
commit to it.
I think for me it's the hypocrisy of it. Like this is your platform, you own it, you can do what you want with it from the standpoint of you own this, right? Just like if I bought a book, I should be able to do what I want to with that book as long as it's not illegal. So he can do whatever he wants to with it as long as it's not illegal, right? But the things that he publicly says or proclaims kind of makes him out to be more like Lex Luthor, not exactly a good guy. This doesn't look good. This isn't like a good action. You aren't doing something that's kind or nice or anything like that. And one of the things about some of these like platforms, like these podcast platforms that people use in these ways or reach out, they had Twitter integration built into them. So in the past, you had like part of the like Twitter and Facebook way that they were trying to get integrated into everything is you would have like an integration where you could automatically tweet. I mean, our podcast platform, we use Podbean, and if you're not picking it up from Podbean and you're just picking it up from Twitter or something like that, that is one of the ways that we kind of send it out there into the world. If somebody wants to know when there's a new podcast coming out, they can, get it on any of the things. Twitter could just shut that down like tomorrow and basically make our Twitter account useless at that point. The automation that announces, hey, you know, um, Podbean has a new episode of Beer and Broadband, just shut that down. It's no more. And I think from that perspective, I'm kind of as a customer looking at this as one of your users, as one of the people that's sitting there and saying, I use your service, and saying, oh, yeah, the way that you're doing this is not meeting your customers' needs. You're not doing something that makes me want to continue using your service. Um, it kind of sucks. And yeah, okay, right now, Twitter's kind of the only game in town, but there's other ways that I could alert people to, our podcast being published. So you should be trying to make me happy, not like trying to restrict me so that I'm, bending to your will or something like that. And then you're telling me this is a free speech platform. I mean, come on, man. That's just offensive and stupid. I don't like being lied to. you know, Everybody tells a falsehood sometime, but if you're just going to consistently do it, just quit lying and just say what you're actually doing. You know, you're
Yeah.
trying to force people to pay for your platform that you bought and had a huge loss on, and you're too egotistical to admit that you're being the bad guy here. Basically, at this point, you know.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I kind of disagree with you on several parts of that. The biggest thing to me, right, is Twitter was a platform that was free because it basically let anyone post anything and they harvested all of your data off of it.
Hmm.
We've got pretty good proof that when Elon took over, he's moving the company away from that. AdSense platforms have changed and things like that. So the line he has to figure out is where does the monetization start and where does it stop? And that's, I think, what's running a lot of this. Is I think from a business perspective, Elon wants to say, okay, if you're a company doing something or you're a competitive platform doing something on my platform, we should get paid for it. So, if you want to be the official Frito-Lay's Twitter account, you got to pay me money because now you're doing business on my platform. So from that angle, I can see what he's thinking about with things like Substack and even other like podcast platforms, even though it doesn't look like they've touched any of those yet. That's somebody who is potentially, not potentially, they are using your platform to operate their business, whether it's profitable or not. We don't charge anybody to listen to this. But, Substack does. You have subscribers tier systems and stuff like that for when you can access what content. But the big problem to me is you are making changes on a very large international platform without advertising them. And that screams to me more of just somewhere in this, web of a company, because, Elon really doesn't, Elon didn't wake up one day and said, hey, we're pushing this right here. I wrote the code to do it. He's got people working under him and managers driving engineers and all that stuff. But when you say, hey, Substack, you're not okay, but Facebook, you are okay, but you weren't okay before, but then I got backlash and now you're okay now. Like, where's the thing here? Where's the problem? Like, what is it you're actually trying to do? Because my concern as a user is if I don't know the direction you're taking the company, I can't make plans, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're going to say, hey, if you're on a monetized platform, you just can't interact with us, that seems weird to me. But okay, is then the direction of, hey, if you're going to have a Twitter account that posts these links, you have to have a subscriber model. You have to like pay me the $8 a month. Sure, okay. Are you going to go like the API route where it's like, hey, if you're going to push something from your system to my system, it's a penny every time you do it, something like that. Okay, that's fine too. But what is it? At the end of the day, you've picked up a company that was purging money. You're trying to turn it profitable. I understand you have to change the way you're doing business. But when things like this happen, and like if you Google this thing, apart from the link we'll probably have in the show notes, Google this, then Elon saying, no, we're not doing this. Other places are saying, oh, well, it actually works like this. And it's like, even as a company, you don't have a unified voice on what is happening. And that's the bigger concern to me. You got to be forward with your consumers, whether it's going to affect them positively or not, with where the platform is going. Nobody should wake up on a Friday morning and say, whoa, my stuff doesn't work anymore. And that was a planned thing. If there's an outage, there's an outage. That's fine. But if you've changed a policy and now your users are affected, that's an issue.
So I hear what you're saying. I think, though, this isn't quite like the multi-factor authentication thing. Even though I think that's unethical to put someone in a less secure position on their account, or let's make it so that you have to pay for a blue check mark so it's easier to impersonate people. I mean, it's not easier to impersonate people. That's not what I mean, but it's easier to impersonate people because anybody can just pay for the name that they're getting, So this isn't quite the same though. This is someone who we have records of him saying this is a free speech platform. I'm going to turn this around so that anyone that wants to say and use their voice on this platform can. Now, monetization and all that stuff aside, I understand that, and as a CEO of a company, you do have a responsibility to make sure that your company is healthy. But doing things like this, the part that I most agree with you on is when you just do it willy-nilly or just without, just kind of, as I said before, schizophrenically, which I probably shouldn't have used the word schizophrenic, but I mean it in like the kind of chaotic, erratic way that is characteristic of schizophrenia, not like in any sort of down, not playing down people that have that mental disorder. Um, but when you do things like that, that only hurts your consumer base. That doesn't help them, and that drives people away. So when people see things like this from companies, they generally lose faith in them, and then that hurts your brand. That hurts everything even more. So you're not you may have like this tough businessman kind of bravado when you're thinking about things like this, but you're not actually doing anything that's helpful. Um, and I agree with you. Like he needs to, as you said, pick a lane. Decide whether you're going forwards or backwards. Decide what the direction of your company is. But he also needs to think about what he's saying, because you have your reputation in life, and this is kind of like one of those things that's publicly just killing Twitters. And I mean, Elon's already been in a death spiral of reputation for a while. There's people who love the guy and people who hate him, but um, everyone must admit that he does a lot of things that are very contradictory to one another. And it's kind of interesting the things he takes credit for. They aren't necessarily the things that he's actually achieved. So, his reputation's already kind of having some problems. And then you've got like your company's reputation, which your reputation often is what you make profit off of as a company. And so I think from that standpoint, and then from I've publicly said this thing, and this is the direction that I've said the company is going in, I find that to be distasteful, you know, very
Yeah.
distasteful.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly put his foot in his mouth several times in the past. I guess I'm just struggling to see how this is one of them, because he's not deleting tweets. He's not stopping somebody from posting whatever they want. I mean, if you take this into real life, this is the equivalent of saying, hey, in this space you can't have signs. Hey, in this space you can't hand out flyers, which happens all the time in particular locations. Like the only thing he's blocked is the ability for someone else to like click the retweet button. If they're passionate about it, they can just go write their own tweet to their followers. It's not like at any point if you like put that link in, you're no longer like, it's not like you're shadow banned, your followers can't see it, anything like that. It's just a couple of the basically community interaction features are not there, which is something he was upfront with from the beginning. So if we like rewind a couple, what is it, like 6 or 7 months ago,
Yeah.
when he was talking about that, that was one of the things I kind of called out as, well, you kind of got to make a decision about that. He's saying you can post whatever you want, but if it's a particular type of content we don't want, you're not going to have all your features. And granted, at that time, it was the example being used was like, oh, if you want to post something that could maybe be considered, hateful or disrespectful, you'll be allowed to post it, but you're not going to be able to like use all the other features to advertise it. Which, sure, whatever. That's at the same time, you could say that's, not fully 100% free speech. But if we're okay with it in that context, I don't see why it's any different for this one. Is you're basically saying, hey, particular types of content you can post, but you won't have all the features. So I don't think that's the hypocrisy. The bigger hypocrisy to me is kind of what we touched on, that you're gonna say you're gonna go do these things, and then when you get enough pushback, you stop until you try and do it again when people don't notice. This is the kind of thing that we were talking about with Wizards of the Coast, where
Yep.
like, hey, we're going to make this rule change. Oh, but guys, it won't be that bad. And look, see, we're not putting anything in writing, but we're telling you guys we're going to change things. And whether or not they're actually going to change them, we don't know. They just claimed they would, but they're not in a legal document. Like, the things they were trying to change for the worse were. So I don't know. I understand people not liking Musk. I'm not a big fan of Musk because I think a lot of his technology decisions are very short-sighted. Like a lot of the Starlink stuff is great networking technology, but you're putting so many satellites into space that it's interfering with other stuff.
Yep. It's
It's
not very
that
forward
kind
thinking.
of it's that kind of short-sightedness that is my problem with Musk. But in terms of like, is this still free speech? I would have to say that it still is. I mean, I'd still believe it is more free than what we saw from Twitter before he took over, because you'd see that all the time, that someone would get shadow banned and then nobody could see their posts anymore, or they would just straight up get blocked or wouldn't be allowed to post content anymore. I mean, even like small stuff, like various little YouTube creators I follow would have like their accounts shadow banned because someone like pretended to be them, or made some other account and claimed to be the primary account and got their other account taken away and all that stuff.
Yeah, okay, so I see where we're disagreeing here, and I think if you remember back to that 6 months ago that you're talking about, where we had like a talk about Twitter, I even said then that I disagreed with him saying that he was a freedom of speech platform. I mean, definitely saying our platform is more free. That's great. Our platform is not going to stop people from being able to post whatever they want to. We just won't let you interact with stuff if it's something that's like offensive or something like that. That's awesome. That definitely is more um, free speech in those terms. But when you're talking about a freedom of speech platform, um, you know, from like a concept, you're saying I am going to allow you as a herald. I am going to say I'm going to allow you to have a platform to be able to talk about whatever it is that you want to talk about. I mean, even when we talk about like stuff in the United States, when we talk about being a free country and having freedom of speech and everything like that, some of that's kind of wrong. It's not. That's not actually what we're doing. What we're doing is we have a an amount of freedom to be able to talk about stuff, but there's still things that we consider to be hate speech or hate crimes or stuff like that. And without going all down that rabbit hole, the hypocrisy that I see is I'm trying to is or he Elon is trying to capitalize off the idea of freedom of speech while using that marketing language, also still limiting people's ability to express themselves.
Yeah, I see what you're
Um,
saying
and
now.
yeah,
And I'll agree with you on that. And that really comes down to, you will never in America have a free speech platform, because the way the laws are written is that
yeah,
whoever runs or hosts that service is ultimately responsible for the content on it.
yep,
If
exactly.
you remember in like the 90s and early 2000s, you were seeing forums getting just knocked off left and right because, oh, hey, on this forum, you're allowing people to post screenshots of movies as reaction images. That's against copyright. So now, your platforms, you either need to take all those images off, or we're going to basically sue you and or fine you, depending on exactly what was getting posted. So you're
Yep.
right. You're right to that end. There's no such thing as a free speech platform, because since those rules exist, that essentially if you host the content, you're responsible for the content. That's very different from, if we go to like the town hall approach. Just like there's certain things that are not protected by free speech. Like if you're screaming there's a fire and people panic, that's not about free speech. You can get arrested for that.
Yep.
But in that scenario, you, as the person who did the thing, are responsible. Whereas in the digital format, it's essentially you as the person who did the thing being responsible, and the platform it was on are responsible. So like there's now that dual responsibility that really gets in the way of not having these sort of features of that we can remove posts, we can censor posts, we can do whatever. There's almost legally mandated to have them if you want to be able to stay open.
Yep, exactly. So trying to market yourself as this thing that's supposed to battle against that, and let everybody do that, and drawing people to it, and then limiting their ability to talk, I find that dishonest. Um,
Yeah,
and
I can see what you mean there. If you compare Twitter before Elon to Twitter after Elon, you can see improvements. But you're right. If you look at it from the guise of if you knew nothing about Twitter beforehand and you're just like a new user coming to this platform for completely unrestricted speech, you're not going to find it.
exactly. And I mean, he's not the first person that's done that. Truth Social was supposed to be that way. That blew up really quick. I mean, it's disingenuous when companies try to do things like that. And I am I think when I see things like this, coming from the background that I have of having been a you know, a law enforcement officer, having a degree in criminal justice, understanding how the law works when it comes to that stuff, and really like kind of being able to look at what's happening here and say, okay, from a legal perspective, that's not what you're saying is not exactly what you're doing. From a semantics perspective, it's also not what you're saying. Like you're with one hand, you're offering peace, and with another, you're offering violence in a sense. Well, that's probably a wrong way to say that. But with one hand, you're saying, I'm going to do this, but the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
So it just it feels off every time I see one of these articles. And the reason I wanted to talk about it is this is another example of the thing that we talked about last season, where, Twitter is getting changed, and that's fine, but the way it's being, um, you know, um, advertised is not the thing that you're actually getting. And the concern I have with it is, as someone who started using this from a perspective of, this is the thing that you said I could use this for, and you licensed me to be able to do it, and now you're starting to take that functionality away. I kind of see that also as a bit of a problem, because eventually you're going to not have anybody interacting with the platform if they're not getting any value out of it. So what value am I going to get out of your platform if you're like, you have to pay me, what was the last thing was like $50 a month or $100 a month or something like that, if you're a company, and you have to pay me to be able to have a verified Twitter account, to be able to be secure on your Twitter account so that people can't steal your account, things like that. That is almost like blackmail in a sense. And it's not good security practice. That's not, if you're looking at something like the CCSP or the CISSP or something like that, those all like kind of are like, look, if you're a company that's not giving people, two-factor authentication, or if you're not doing this, or you're not doing that, that's a huge security problem, for everyone. So I just kind of look at these things, and I am completely flabbergasted that there is not more outrage. Not because I think that, um, Substack, which I've never used before. It's not like a platform that I use. I don't even like go deep into the weeds of understanding all of the things that Substack is. But if you're talking about, you know, Substack is just like the next thing. But what about like is Al Jazeera, the platform that reporters can use to be able to talk about stuff in some of these like more dangerous countries, the BBC, World News, things like that. Are you going to start limiting their ability to send out information on your platform? I mean, that was the big value that you had in the past. What value are you replacing that with? And I'm not seeing any. There's very little. So um, why
Yeah,
why
and
would I
I'll
do.
I'll admit
include
that that kind of goes back to what I was saying originally. Like, you got to figure out what your platform is for.
Yeah,
If
exactly.
you're trying to just be social media, you want to be like, hey, you don't need Facebook, you can have Twitter, then yeah, not having certain integrations is fine because that's not what you want. And like two factor is such a great example of like, figure out how you want to do your monetization. Because the idea that you're locking two factor away from a non paid user is kind of dangerous. Like, I understand from a purely monetary standpoint, two factor is not free. Like, if you're sending text messages, those cost you money. You're integrating with an app, those cost you money. But the way almost every other company would do this is, how much do I have to charge the actual companies, the people who like get something out of this paid membership, so that the free users can continue to use it for free?
Yep.
Right? So like, you know, there's plenty of sites that I use that I don't pay them any money, but I still have two factor because either I'm doing something with them that generates some money, like the stuff I do for my stocks, or, you know, they've just got some paid level. Like, when I get my two auths from Google, you can buy more storage from Google. You can do all sorts of things that monetize your Google experience so they can front the however much it costs per login to do two factor for everybody.
Yep.
You know, so that's again, that's my big red flag for Twitter, is that like, you took over a very large existing platform, you're revamping it very, very quickly, and you're revamping it fast enough, you're making mistakes, in all honesty. And that's my concern. Whereas things like all these other like tech projects, those are like built from the ground up. And it's like, we're going to just keep doing stuff and doing stuff and doing stuff until we figure it out. And as we've talked about before, CEOs are just cheerleaders for their companies.
Yep.
Elon Musk is not an engineer, really, in the sense that he like engineers the actual products he sells. I know he does have some like software engineering background, but you know, he doesn't make the cars, you know. So, you know, go out there, cheerlead, that's fine, but you got to make sure from that position of power you're in that you are at least making sure the things under you are working okay. Like, he doesn't control directly that manager or whatever, but us working in a large enterprise company, our CEO says go do something. It goes down to the SVP and then the VP and then the whoever until it eventually reaches us. And that's not always a perfect system. I won't say you never have any misses, but you shouldn't be making headlines every month or two.
Right.
You know, you gotta keep things, especially on a platform like this, as a social media platform, you have to keep it public. Again, if Twitter had come out 2 weeks ago or a month ago and said, hey, here are the new rules, these are the sites that it's going to be affected to first, and we'll be rolling out to other ones, sure, people would probably be upset if they use those platforms, but it would not have generated nearly as much bad press as this. Again, hey, I showed up, my thing doesn't work, why does my thing not work? You know?
Yep. I think I think we're kind of beating a dead horse at this point, but you're spot on with that. Like the ability for someone that's using your platform for profit or not, but they're using it in some sort of professional way, and you not seeming dependable or trustworthy, just kind of kills your brand.
Yeah.
And not knowing how to plan for that just is the epitome of that. So yeah, I don't want to like stop you from talking about it. I just
No, you're good. We have talked about it for like an entire podcast length of time.
definitely. There was one more topic. I just kind of wanted to hit on real quick because it's kind of in the same vein. So like Google bought like Nest and they had their like drop cams and stuff like that,
Hmm.
right? And they bought them years, and I think it was like 2015, 2016. And I just threw this in here because this is another example of a company that does something, they buy it, and even though they're signaling to people, hey, we're going to shut this down or whatever, they gave a value, they gave something to you, said that it was going to bring value, told their shareholders it was going to bring value, planned for it to bring value, and then it hasn't brought as much value as they thought, and so now they're going to kill like either the old version of this and try to force you to buy a new one or something like that. So if you like look up the death of home automation or the death of like corporate home automation or something like that, you can see where people since like 2012 to 2015 have been talking about like all this stuff. And there's at least one article probably about every year, maybe two or three or five or 10 or 15. It could be way more than what I'm saying, but there are articles every year. The death of home automation is this year. Um, which I don't think. I think with platforms like Habitat and stuff like that, and some more open things like what is the name of that? Tulia or something like that. There's a more
Hmm.
open platform that you can use to do home automation with sensors and stuff like that. And then you have things um, that are a little bit more locked down, but still like tie into all those platforms. But Nest and things like this, these were like the first products that kind of came out and were like, hey, you can get a thermostat and a camera and some sensors and be able to like automate the temperature in your home and stuff like that. And that doesn't seem to have been as profitable as the big companies want it to be. And so Amazon and Google are both looking to shut down certain features of things. And they're like digital assistants and stuff like that. So, as someone who probably doesn't use as much of the automation as I do, which I have certain uses for it. Um, what what do you think about this particular topic overall? Um,
Yeah,
you know,
so there's two things here, right? There's what's going on with like Dropcam and Nest, and then there's some other home automation stuff is kind of getting clipped. In all honesty, I think what's happening with Nest and Dropcam is frankly the worst of the two. Because I don't know how like in the know you are about that, but I started researching it when you put it on for a topic. And the big driver here is like Google bought Nest and Dropcam to basically compete with ADT because they were already ADT's competition.
right?
It wasn't profitable enough, so they're shutting those services down and have partnered with ADT.
Yep.
So like all this same stuff you'll be able to do in like the Google sphere. It's just they bought up competitor companies and then closed those competitor companies. And so now there's less competition in this market.
Yeah.
And that just kind of screams to me like, I mean, it's not shady, it's not illegal, but it is, I think, morally kind of wrong. You bought companies, they didn't make you enough money, which frankly, they could have been making enough money for those companies. Their
Yep.
profit margins could have been fine. I don't know the history. Maybe they sought to be acquired, maybe they didn't. But if they were not seeking to be acquired and they were doing okay, and then you come in with a huge offer of like, yeah, but would you sell it for this much? You're like, oh yeah, I mean, I guess we would. That's a lot of money. And then you like discontinue their product. That's that's pretty scummy in my mind.
Yep.
Because like we work at a company that acquires a lot of companies.
Hmm.
That's a viable market strategy to how you stay ahead is you find companies you think that could benefit from your supply chain and other things like that, and you eat them up. But when we have a product line fail, we sell it,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Like, when Linksys got bought, and it didn't work out, we sold Linksys. Linksys is still around.
Yep.
But Google is shutting these services down entirely, from what I understand. Maybe I'm wrong on that because I've only done like a day's worth of research. But my understanding is that these companies are pretty much
Yeah, they're shutting them
just
down
gone.
completely. Yeah, they're going to
Yeah.
get rid of both of them. And
Yeah.
so
So
like
instead of
I,
finding
I
another
don't know if
buyer,
I don't know if they're getting I don't know if they're getting rid of all support for them because that's not as um you know like sure, and it's not all of Nest products because Google renamed like their digital assistant. That's why the digital assistant comes into this. Their digital
yeah.
assistant platform with the the smart um, speakers and things like that, the little Nest home thing, they all kind of got rebranded and put into that platform. So it's only the Nest Secure, which is the drop cams, um, the window sensors, the things like that that you could use to be able to secure your home. They're shutting that down.
Yeah, they are. So from what I understand, and again, this is just a day's worth of research, they are basically offering them a free setup to the new system with ADT or a
Right.
$200 credit. So I don't think they're going to continue to support them, but they're giving you either your money back or some of your money back or an upgrade to the newer product, which is, I mean, better than nothing. But my problem is still there was competition in this market, and now there is massively less because you just drove their competition into the ground.
Yeah, and the
You
the
know,
companies that exist that are the competitors to like ADT and stuff like that, they also kind of work with Google. So is Google going to shut them out? Are they going to
yeah,
make
I
the
mean, that's a good
functionality quit
question.
working?
Are they going to basically say, hey, we're not going to have integration with this platform anymore? And
Yep.
maybe they will because now they've got an official partnership.
Yep.
So, that's that's shady to me. The home assistant stuff, I'll say, I'm not sure how they monetize that platform, but one of the things I have heard over the last year or two is that it is getting harder and harder to make money off of those assistants. So, like,
It
I've
is
got an
for sure.
Amazon Alexa thing, and I will not entertain anything it wants to do. I haven't since I got it. I will tell it what I want, and if it suggests anything else, I tell it to go home. So it'll
Yep.
stop talking to me. I've never bought a product through it, never will buy a product through it. So I can understand, especially as you're starting to see countries like Europe start to get a little bit more aggressive with their privacy laws about what you can and can't monetize, from something like a personal assistant. That I'm not sure if that's being driven by, we're just not making money on this platform anymore, or if it's something else. But I'm not surprised to see it getting restricted.
I'm pretty sure that it's because they're not making as much money as they'd want off of these platforms. Amazon's already talking about like killing off the echoes and all
Mm-hmm.
that stuff because the digital assistant is not making them enough money. It's given them a ton of marketing stuff, but Amazon kind of during the height of our 2021 2022 pandemic era stuff got very bloated and kind of overspent itself, and now it's shrinking back down. And one of the casualties of that are things like their digital assistant platforms and stuff like that. There's
Yep.
rumors that Google still has like some of the same problems with their digital assistant stuff, and the new EU laws and some of the other privacy laws that are coming out of other countries. I wish America was a little bit more forward thinking in this. Um, is killing some of these platforms now. I kind of hate it because I do use digital assistants. They do have a good use in some things, but I'm more like the idea of being able to do things like have whole home streaming without a large amount of money that's being spent, or have like a fairly singular um, kind of platform that I can use to do interesting stuff, as far as like turning on lights, changing temperatures and things like that. I wish that the privacy was a little bit more guarded, but I also wish that it was able to be offset by something else, because this is a useful feature and thing that exists, but the privacy concerns and everything are just becoming too big. at this point, because the amount of stuff that the less profit they make, the more stuff they try to claw out of you to be able to make and sell more stuff. Because I mean, that's essentially you're the product at that point, right?
Oh yeah, and that's we've already talked, I think, some in the past about how toxic kind of like investment culture is, where like, oh, did you not make your profitability goals this quarter? Well, we're gonna drop your stock 20-30%.
Yeah.
It's a massive amount of money that walks out the door if you don't make a ton. And I think that's a real problem when we start talking about useful product lines that don't generate a lot of money. It's if I can't make X millions of dollars on this one product, I can't have it anymore. What if that product actually does a lot of good? It's why I don't think we see like some of these things people thought we would have when technology got to the place it is. Like we've got all this great chat AI stuff, and we've got all these great like potentials for, hey, I could be like first response medical care or something like that. I could in emergency walk people through how to do CPR, yada yada. But you don't really see those.
Nope.
Because you can't monetize that.
Yep, not monetizable.
Who's going to pay the $15 a month for the 1 in 100,000 chance they'll actually need to use that feature? You don't see it. And you're right. It becomes anything that's here that we know people wouldn't pay for but could potentially be useful. I've got to monetize it via whatever means. You become the product because I need to hear every word you're saying off the mic, so I can make some AdSense profile for you.
Yeah, exactly. And then, it's anonymized, but we all know that with just a little bit with being able to take two data sets that exist that you've sold, and you overlap them, well, suddenly the anonymization is gone because it doesn't take much to de-anonymize these things.
Oh yeah, exactly.
So it's really like a kind of a two-edged sword of privacy violation and poor monetization overall,
Yeah, I mean, we saw it. I mean, everywhere. I mean, every big tech company is laying people off or moving people around because, oh Lord, heaven help us, we had a negative quarter. We were down. We thought we would make 1% profit or whatever. We made 0.5%.
Yeah. Well, generally it's like we thought we'd make a 30% profit and we made 15, or something like that.
I mean, even in this economy, a lot of places are projecting losses, and they make their loss, and even though that's projected, they still lose money. Like I remember, was it last year or the year before that like Facebook had to come out and say for the first time ever it had fewer new users, like its user count went down instead of up.
That was like 2 years ago.
Yeah, still the largest platform by far. Lost like 20% of their stock value overnight.
Yep.
Like billions of dollars. And why? No human did that. Like no person who has part of their 401k invested in Facebook woke up that morning and said, "Oh my gosh, Sal, they're down 1 million users." But the big trading firms with their algorithms saw red number bad and just dumped it all.
Yep. No line go up. All bad.
Yep.
Get it off. Yeah.
So, it's not to be pessimistic, but that's kind of the world we live in terms of invested money. I mean, as much as I've been paying attention to the stock markets the last couple of years, if I ever opened a company, I'm not sure I'd ever take it public.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Because
I definitely
you're just there's so many people you have to please just for your stock to be worth anything.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anything like these companies that we're talking about, Amazon, Google, like the companies that are messing around with this stuff, they're waiting on borrowed time. Eventually, they're gonna hit a point like Apple did or something like that, where they start struggling because the promise of what they've given is not the result of what they're giving. So
Oh yeah, I mean,
It's just going to end up being tough
yeah.
for them
In
in
this
some way.
economy, nobody's immune. I mean, Amazon had their first non-profitable quarter, I think, in their existence. This
Well,
most
not in
recent
their
one.
not in their existence, but Amazon, in since they became the online shopping platform and shifted away from just being a book publishing platform.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
In their
yeah,
current iteration.
right, right. They had plenty of non-profitable before when they were just a like a kind of a book platform, um, but it's changed since then. Yeah, so the end of the world's coming. Cats and dogs sleeping together, bees laying down with lambs, whatever. It's all doom and gloom.
Hmm.
Um, yeah,
Man, that's a
so
terrifying image. Bees laying down with, what was it, like sheep, rams, or something you said? All I
with
could
lambs.
imagine was like a wasp nest inside an animal. It like built into the wool.
Um,
There's
what,
there's your next D&D creature for homebrew.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I got some ideas around that, but bees and wasps are not exactly the same thing. They are the same genus, but bees are much more gentle. Like a
Some of
honeybee
them.
or something like that, right?
Yeah, the
But
English honeybee, pretty nice. African bees, not so much.
not nice at all, right?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
Which
so yeah.
which funny anecdote. I found out talking to my dad because I'm gonna like foster a little bee house or however they say it. You can basically pay money and they'll put up a beehive in your honor somewhere and then
Oh,
give you like half the honey they produce. Which could be
oh,
a fun thing
nice.
for us to do for brewing sometime. You get like
That
10
would
pounds
be.
of honey out of it.
Yeah.
But I brought that up. And my dad told me my grandma used to keep bees, and she ran into the same problem. She had English honeybees, which were very tame, barely would ever sting you, but they don't produce a lot of honey. And she wanted more honey because she was selling the honey. So she bought like African honeybees. They weren't like the killer bees, but they produced a lot of honey. They were mean, and the only place you had to put them was kind of out by the country road. And so people would just like be walking down the street and just start getting attacked because you had to like take it down.
Well, so yeah, bees, they're especially like bumblebees and stuff like that, completely different animal from like you know, a, a hornet or an Africanized bee or something like that. Those are much less kind overall. Um, yeah. Anyways, I like the idea of doing the like getting like 10 pounds of honey and being able to do something with it. I think that'd be kind of fun. Like, doing like maybe one or two of these, bee things, especially if it's something where you can say, I want the varietal of honey to be like this. I think that'd be like a ton of fun to like get and then make some mead out of or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah. Well, do you have anything else you want to say about that topic?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay, then. So this was season 6, episode 3 of the Beer and Broadband podcast. It's supposed to come out on April 10th, 2023. And otherwise, thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you next time.